Welcome back to the Strength and Speed podcast. I'm your host, Strength and Speed owner and Conquer the Gauntlet Pro, Evan Preparis. Joining me again, I have the man behind Stoke Shed, Bobby Ross. Bobby, welcome.
Hey!
Yeah, so
we were going to say, come on over.
I didn't know what I was going to say. I messed that up.
Bobby Ross, come on down. Excited to be here, Bob. Well, it hasn't been Bob forever. It's been Drew Carey for like a decade.
It's not the same.
No.
The price is wrong, you know?
He'll never be Bob Barker.
Yeah.
I don't care how skinny your microphone is.
All right. So if you're just joining us for the first time on this special episode, what we're doing is we're providing commentary to my book, Ultra-OCR Man from Special Force Soldier to Regular Setting Professional Obstacle Course Racer. You don't need to listen to the book or read the book to enjoy this podcast, but it will be significantly better if you do listen to the book on audiobook or read it on digital. They each kind of have their advantages, right? The digital book actually has color pictures and links embedded into it. So if you buy the digital, you can actually during some of the other later chapters when I do like OCR America, there's actually a link at the end and you can click and listen to the podcast I did with Overcome and Run that was recorded the day of the event. So you can read my opinion on it and then kind of go back and listen to what I had to say the day of the actual event.
You're a multimedia master, man.
Yeah, I'm so good. The audiobook's nice because you can listen to it on a run. And then the hard copy's nice because I like hard copy stuff. I still buy a lot of hard copy books. And,
who narrated the audiobook?
I got a professional narrator to do it. Bottom line was I did one of my own books and tried to put it on Audible, and their standards were higher than what I produce. And I decided that it would take me a lot of time and effort, so I'll just pay someone. So
that's fair.
Yeah. Name's Paul Stefano, no relation to Mike Stefano from Obstacle Running Adventures.
I need to go listen to it. I feel like there's no possible way to listen to somebody else read your book.
It's super weird the first time I listened to it because he's saying my own words back to me, and I know what he's going to say next because I wrote the book. And it was unnerving. It was like someone else was living my life. So, but after a chapter, I got used to it, and then it was fine.
Does he have a cool voice at least?
Sure. He's got a voice. He's got a voice. He's a professional He's a professional audio guy. So I'll send you a clip and you can judge.
You should just insert it right here in the edit. I know how much Evan loves to edit, you guys.
Yes. Okay. All right. Let's jump back in. So we finished off last time at the end of chapter 4 and going into chapter 5. So chapter 4 ended. We were talking about conventional force operations, basically my time in the 101st. And, kind of listening back to the podcast, I left out a bunch of stuff, again, because it's like your life story, so you can't include everything in there. So I left out a bunch of the military training courses that I went to that people a lot of times talk about, like airborne school. We learned to jump out of a plane 5 times, done it 1,000 feet, so it's super low, and essentially your parachute opens right away. So there's no free fall. It's just a static line, very low altitude, because the idea is to get a lot of people on the ground really fast so you don't get killed.
Jumping from one plane to another? You said 5 times. You jump out from one.
Yeah.
Next one.
It's a week, and all you do is jump out of a plane the entire week. You do one or two a day. I left out air assault school, which again, similar, but it's with helicopters and rappelling. So you rappel out of a helicopter and or learn how to rappel and learn how to, it's called sling load stuff. So essentially you learn how to attach, artillery, cannons, and water buffaloes and bags to the bottom of helicopters, which is actually fairly complicated.
It sounds like the plot to Operation Dumbo Drop.
Yeah. Those guys were either Air Assault or Pathfinder.
So this is really accurate. It's a really accurate movie.
And then Pathfinder, another school I went to, that's like setting up drop zones. So it's the person on the ground who's calling in the airborne operation. Those are all good schools. You get a little medal on your uniform to show your friends and stuff like that. But honestly, the best schools are in special operations. And most of them, there's no patch and there's no medal. It's just a piece of training you go to. And it's something you put into your knowledge bank for future operations. And it's just an awesome experience. Before we start getting into some of Bobby's questions, I think most people, when they hear special operations, they are like, oh, well, the threat level must be higher in special operations than it is in conventional operations. And it's kind of weird because there's not necessarily, right? So my time in the 101st was during the height of the Iraq War. So kind of like 05, 06, and 07, 08. So most of my really good war stories are from the conventional forces, and I had a lot more autonomy actually There's just less rules based off when I arrived in theater during the war. And for special operations, my only deployment to Iraq with them was 2011. So there's a lot more rules. We were essentially shutting things down. So most of my stories are actually not very good. I was advising brigade level leadership and giving them, tips and techniques for making themselves more effective. What I used to tell my wife, which she doesn't like hearing, was I was like, well, my chances of dying or getting maimed horribly were a lot higher in conventional forces because you're driving around the roads. I was like, my chance of being captured and tortured is significantly higher in SF because I'm by myself a lot, or it's just me and one other person. So,
wait, so you were by yourself a lot during the school, or like actually? Because I read it's like 12-man teams, right?
Yeah.
Did you operate autonomously a lot?
So yes and no. So in Iraq, you're still moving in a fairly decent sized element. Some of the other places that are considered technically combat zones by the military are not. I think they're safe, right? So like Kuwait is considered a combat zone. Qatar is considered a combat zone. Lebanon is considered a combat zone. Again, technically combat zones. And in some of those cities, I was walking around or driving around either by myself or with one other person. And, theoretically, if you didn't vary your movements and someone wanted to capture an American, it's a pretty good enticing target.
I feel like if you could choose any American, a Green Beret is not the one that I would choose.
It's true. You do not, because we're not going to go down without a fight. Probably not going to, you're probably not going to make it out of the point of capture unless you come in with overwhelming force initially. So.
Or die.
Yeah.
You're cool, Evan.
Thanks, Bobby.
Hey, talk about dive school.
Yeah, because I used to do triathlons. When I showed up to a team, they were like, you should go to dive school. And I was like, I really don't want to do that. And they were like, well, you're in the Army, so that's an order. You don't really have a choice. And I was like, okay. I don't mind swimming. I hate breath hold stuff, right? So dive school is a lot similar to free diving. So it's prolonged breath hold and you got to do things underwater. And I just don't like that. And running out of oxygen is no fun. And as you read in the book, I pushed myself to the point of complete unconsciousness twice underwater. And it is actually, when you actually go out, it's actually not bad. But there's a moment you kind of like panic as it gets closer to you blacking out. And then right before you black out, you're like, no, I'm fine. I'm definitely going to make it. And then the lights just go out and you're unconscious at the bottom of the pool and you have to get rescued. And what's kind of interesting is, right, when you black out, you think like, oh, well, then all the water goes rushing into your lungs. Actually, like, because like the mammalian dive reflex or something, and there's water on your face, like it signals your body to not breathe in. So they don't like pump your lungs when they pull you out. They just pull you out and they put some oxygen on you and you just start breathing again. It's crazy.
That's crazy. You're not going to just like suck a bunch of air in or suck a bunch of water in. That's
correct.
Just not how your brain not how your brain does that. Yeah. This is like endlessly fascinating to me because the way you frame it in the book is talking about mentally overriding the, I guess, instinctive or physical reactions that you have when you are near your actual physical limits. And I think a lot of us think about and idealize the idea of a person who pushes past their physical limits, but very few of us get there. I mean, like, notwithstanding, like, twice in a row in the same school. I think that's fascinating. Like, I love that you talk about that.
I'm proud that I pushed that hard, but I'm not proud of the outcome, right? The Army is very outcome-oriented. And, right, I failed that school. So that's, like, to me, that's, like, a permanent black mark on my resume, Again, no one cares about your own results more than you, right? Just like race results. Personally, I'm not very pleased with that. But like no one in my coworkers care. Like that's not something that comes up in conversation.
Right. I love when you say outcome orientation, we talk a whole lot in culture about, well, you gave it your best. That's what counts. That's actually not necessarily what counted, right? Like what counted was whether or not you achieved your goal.
Right. The Army is very outcome oriented. It's like, well, did you pass? No. Then who cares? I don't care what your excuse is, right? Like, oh, I've got, whatever your personal problem is that's giving you issues. Like, no one cares. I was surrounded by that world and those people so much I thought that's the way everyone behaved. And like, as I started getting into circles like obstacle course racing that were not necessarily all military, it was a cultural adjustment for me coming like, I'm still in the military, but being exposed to different groups of people, because we're just so outcome oriented. It doesn't, like, no one cares. Exactly. Like, if you're overweight and you push yourself to a new PR, but still fail, like, no one cares. All they care about is that you failed. And the regular world is not like that.
I think it is. I just think that our cultural circles aren't like that. I think that maybe it starts with schools. I don't know. Like that's interesting to me, because I find myself thinking that same way too. I'm not really so much worried about the amount of effort I do something. I choose the tasks that I do very carefully, because what I want is to succeed, right? Like I feel like that's the way businesses work.
Right.
Nobody cares that, like, Wells Fargo does their best if they go under. No, because you don't choose a bank based on whether or not they put out a good effort. I think that's healthy for an athlete, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. And we touched on a little bit last podcast, and we'll touch on it again at the last chapter of the book, but it's also very kind of like everything is your fault. Whatever the outcome is, it's your fault. If it's good, it's your fault. If it's bad, it's your fault. Kind of like extreme ownership of how things are panning out. Again, I think a lot of that stems from combat, where if you get into a bad situation, you can't be like, oh, well, this one's not my fault. There's too many enemy. They set up an IED. It's really not convenient. I slept, that's not okay. So
I'm dead, but it wasn't my fault.
Right.
You don't get another go.
Yeah. A lot of the political and cultural stuff that's been going on in the past year, it felt very weird to me, very foreign to me. And I remember like scrolling through Facebook, I was like, it didn't feel like anyone was thinking the same as me until I went into, there's like a special forces team room, like a Facebook group. And I went in there, and that was the only place where I felt like, the special forces Facebook group, where I felt like people understood the way I was thinking. It was just weird. You get surrounded by your own type of people, and you forget that other people think differently.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the culture is, I mean, like, you're completely immersed in it.
Yes. Yeah.
I know I'm getting ahead of myself. Like, let's put a pin in that, because like, I want to ask if that informed the way you thought about strength and speed when you started it. So hold on to that.
Okay. One of the things I didn't talk about in the book is you've been to the guest room, right? Which is my military. That's where I keep all my military memorabilia.
Yeah, man. That's where I sleep and read all your comic books.
Yeah, that's right. So
mostly the second one.
Yeah. I've got a lot of stuff I brought back from deployments that we were allowed to bring back, and some training stuff, again, that I don't mention in the book just because getting into too much nuance. But like, one of my training things for our special operations, I got to ride an AC-130, the plane with the big 105 millimeter cannon sticking out the side from like Call of Duty that you used to blow up the bad guys, right? I got to ride in one of those. I got to call for fire from one of those. Fast roping at night and under night vision, and fast roping out of Osprey V-22. It's like a VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So stuff like that. Like I said in the beginning of this episode, a lot of the schools and training we go to, it's just, you don't get a badge or anything for it. It's just something you go to. And sometimes you get like an actual certification. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes just an experience you file away. But the cool thing about special operations is a lot of it's vendor training, right? So if someone has a skill out there and you can justify how it relates to your job, you can go, right? So you want to go to race car driving because that teaches you how to drive aggressively in a combat situation? Approved. And there's money, right? Approved. You want to go learn how to shoot from the guys who are the best shooters in the world? Approved. I never did any specific kind of offensive driving stuff, but guys on my team would go, and then they would come back and they'd pass that knowledge on to the rest of the team. So you also get a lot of secondary training benefits that way.
Oh, yeah. Dude, that's great, because we do something that's a real disservice, I think, in the way that we're getting back to schools. But I think in the way that colleges work is we look at degrees rather than the skills that people have picked up. It's an imperfect system, but like it sounds like the way you're doing it is the right way. The whole point is the skill and the ability to implement that in a real life situation, rather than whether or not you got a degree and can say, oh, I can do this, but in actuality, you get onto a job and you can't actually do it.
Right.
It's all about demonstration.
So I think the big army is very much certification oriented, and the special operations a lot more skill oriented. And I think one of the things that always surprises people is, right, special forces guys are not the best at stuff. They're like pretty good at a lot of different things, like above average at a lot of different things, right? So we bring in outside people to train us to shoot because there are people, all they do is shoot. We bring in outside people to train us to drive because all they do is drive. We bring in outside people to, skill X, skill Y, skill Z. And, and I think again, ahead of ourselves, when you transition to obstacle course racing, right? Like I take the same approach where if I want to get faster as an OCR athlete, I'm going to run with runners. I'm going to obstacle train with ninjas, and I'm going to strength train with weightlifters, right? Because they're pushing you with their own specialty. Or just like a mixed martial artist trains, right? He has like a grappling coach, a striking coach, a kind of a MMA well-rounded coach, a conditioning coach, right?
Right.
So, same concept.
That's awesome. Like most of us don't get that sort of community in our lives. You actually talked about it in the chapter. These are like your words. You said for the next several years of my life, talking about special operations. Like I worked with people who would not only sacrifice their life for others, but it was viewed as the only acceptable outcome of the situation dictated. Like that's rad. Like that brings everyone up in every way, every day, when you know that you can count on those people to hold themselves to a standard that was that high.
Right. Yeah. If you were in a combat situation or stressful situation and someone essentially pussies out on something, right? Like that's like a permanent black mark on that guy. And those stories make their way around the team room and down the hallway, and that guy gets a reputation. And all of a sudden he's someone that's known as like, you can't rely on this guy. Like you don't want that dude on your team because if things get bad, he's not coming to save you. So
yeah. There was one other story. Now I'm like looking through the book right now that I really enjoyed. Oh, it was the treadmill marathon.
Yeah.
With Tracy Hutt. Nope, that was the boxer. It was someone else.
Yeah.
Jafani?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Talk about that, because that was your second treadmill marathon?
Yeah, I vowed I would never do another one, and made friends with another soldier on post, Kate, and she was training for a marathon, like all on a treadmill, right? So every training run was on a treadmill.
Really?
She had to do a 22 mile or a 20 mile. I can't remember what it was. I was like, oh, you want some company? And she's like, sure, because it's going to be boring as F, right? So I did the math and I was like, well, her 22 mile pace is right around my marathon pacer. So I was like, well, I'll just run next to you. And that one actually wasn't bad because it was air conditioned and I had company. And we didn't really talk that much. We mostly just kind of stayed in our own world. But it was just like having someone else suffering next to you. It's just kind of like a nice touch.
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure if I mentioned in the book, but I did a half marathon on base the day after. I don't know if I mentioned that.
No,
I think I left. Yeah, whatever.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Why?
So her training run was on Saturday, and they were doing a half marathon on the base we were on Sunday.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just like a thing you did.
No, it just happened to line up. I think I came in third for the half. The competition field wasn't too deep, but so I still did. I still did pretty good. Last episode, you were asking me about specific people, and one of the guys, I'll just use his first name, Joe. He was on my team, so he's one I had like a lot of personal interaction with. Was deployed to Iraq for literally half of the war, right? So he had 5 years of deployment time in Iraq, and he's not sitting behind a desk. He's one of those guys he's going out like every day. Just had the utmost respect for him. I still think he was the smartest guy on the team. I can't remember if he had his bachelor's or was getting his bachelor's, but he's the type of guy who reads news stories like nonstop and just had a ton of experience in special operations, right? Like,
yeah.
To me, like guys like him are like they take what I've done and just completely put me to shame, right? I just pale in comparison. And what's crazy about him, you follow some of my Instagram posts, he actually married another female in the military who was killed in Syria in 19. So what was crazy about him was like, I mean, no one's given more to the country than him. And he ends up losing his wife, essentially as he was getting ready to retire. And it was just like, and her story is super tragic too. I think she was diagnosed with cancer, but she couldn't get the job she wanted because she had cancer, but she was still eligible to deploy. So they deployed her and she gets blown up in Syria. And just heartbreaking to see that.
And that's the worst. It's literally the worst.
Yeah. So, and then it's kind of touching back on some of the other things we said on the last episode. Just wanted to clarify, there's nothing wrong with getting help if people are having mental issues or problems. I don't think we came across that way, but saying you need help, there's nothing wrong with that. I just think following the path where ultimately leads to suicide, I have a lot of, like I said, unempathetic towards that.
Yeah, and the sorts of like personalities that are drawn to these kinds of like extreme things, like Ultra-OCR, and then like like high level like special forces, like that's the kind of stuff where like the people can have a hard time like acknowledging that they may have some like a problem.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So you just kind of like push forward, just like kind of dig into it, and then like before you know it, like things are kind of past your ability to kind of push through it.
Yeah, I mean, there's
out of the bodom of a pool.
there's a very real, like, you don't show weakness. Also with kind of comparing today's social media culture with kind of the military, right? Like in the military, you try to never show weakness. That's like what you do, right? You just, because no one, like if you show weakness and you're on a 12-man team, they're not like, oh, way to have the courage to admit that. Like no one says that. It's like you need to fix yourself so you're not weak, mentally or physically, whatever the case may be. Because there's only 12 of us, so you got to pull your weight. Period. Again, very outcome based. Like again, no one cares where you started at. They just care where you're at right now.
Does that make a difference in whether or not you're able to be honest with yourself about stuff like that, though, or honest with one another? Like, is there room for that?
Yeah, there's absolutely room for honesty with one another. It probably even more so because, like most type A groups of males, they like to pick on each other's weaknesses, right? So
yeah,
you'll probably find out, like they'll probably make fun of you first when like, right, if you go to the range and you have the worst, the widest spread of bullet holes in your target, they're going to make fun of you, right? They're going to let you know that you're a crappy shooter, and they're going to be like, make sure he's number one man when he goes into the room so he doesn't shoot one of us, right? Like, and not number 4 man who's coming into a room full of people.
We call you Evan Confetti, man. Yeah, looks like a party over there.
So that with the military, especially as a leader, I tried, and you're not going to be, but you try to be the best at everything, because you don't want, as a leader, you don't want to be coming in last, whether it's on a run or a ruck march or at the shooting range or doing driving training, whatever it is. You don't want to be near the bottom. You want to be preferably at the top or near the top. So, that people have something to strive for. Jumping ahead, that's where I take a lot of my OCR stuff, right? Like, am I the best podcaster? I don't know. I try to be. Am I the best writer? I don't know. I try to be. Am I the best endurance athlete? I don't know. I try to be, right? Like, I try to do all those things at a pretty high level, even though I may not be at the number 1 spot. I'm trying to get up there. Well-rounded approach type thing.
Yeah.
I think that covers most of the special operations. I actually left out a lot of the stories in there because some of the stuff we do, and it's going to sound sexy, but it's not. Some of the stuff is like, right, there are certain things that are classified, and I didn't want to start getting into issues in my book. So I gloss over a lot of the operational stuff just to avoid any possible leaks or getting into trouble. Like I said, most of my really good stories are in the conventional force. Some of the stuff we did and some of the things I know were cool from special operations. Honestly, most classified information is really boring. It's so boring. It's right. There's like a secret internet. Boring. So boring. There's a top secret internet.
Like 1996.
Yeah, there's a top secret internet. Also boring. They're
you can't even play Flash games.
They're extremely boring things. It sounds a lot sexier than it is with a lot of this stuff. And the military has a way of sucking the fun out of almost everything. So you see a couple of military guys coming over to OCR, but a lot of military guys don't run races because the Army made running not fun, because they were like, all right, we're going to run until someone throws up. And you're like, this is a terrible way to get better at running, but okay. Same thing, right? We do obstacle courses and they're not fun because you're doing flutter kicks and push-ups between obstacles.
Oh, man.
It's usually not timed. The SEALs, the one they do for the SEALs is timed and it's a competitive event. For most of the Army ones at the schools you go to, it's pass fails. It's like, do this obstacle. All right, now do this obstacle. All right, do push-ups now. That doesn't count for anything. All right, now do this obstacle. So.
No, it doesn't. This is for nothing, literally.
This is literally for nothing. And if you've been in the Army a while, you eventually figure out they're just going to make you do push-ups until you start struggling and you're tired. And then you just pretend to get tired earlier. So spoiler for anyone going to Army schools.
Is there a part of you that chooses not to do something unless you're certain you can do it at a very high level?
No.
Like, am I going to hate playing Settlers of Catan with you?
Oh, I hate board games.
It's because you're not good at it. I found something Evan's not good at.
Like we talked about last time, like I've quit things in the past. It's I've made a decision on doing something, I'm going to follow through. And I typically, I think there's a difference between quitting mid-race and mid-season or, finishing your race and then being like, I'm never doing that again because that was not fun, right? I think there's a big difference between the two. Typically don't walk off of things in the middle of an event, right? Like I'm not gonna quit an Army school if I say I'm gonna go to it. I'm not gonna drop out of a race until I'm essentially medically disqualified.
That sandstorm actually knocks you off the course.
A little bit, yeah. Let's finish up the special operations there. As a junior officer in special operations, you do a lot of awesome stuff. As you get into the higher ranks, it's a lot less cool. You do a lot more sitting behind a desk, which is what I do now. Not to go too dark on us again, but that very first deployment in the conventional force compared to some of the other deployments, right? In the other deployments, it was more like we're fighting this generic enemy, right? Or there's this generic bad guy, or sometimes we have we call him baseball card, which kind of has his bio and stuff. Yeah. On that first deployment, I knew who we were trying to capture, kill by name. I knew their families. I'd been to their house, right? I'd been collecting pictures of them because we were trying to capture and kill these dudes. So it was very personal. Like in hindsight, looking back, it seems like a really unhealthy way to live your life for a while. Kind of what we had to do at the time, but we were there were, by name list, like these people I've met some of them that we were legitimately trying to kill on a daily basis. And that's what I spent most of my time thinking about. It's just probably not healthy for long term. I don't think like that anymore. So moved past that. I've moved past that. But it seems like, kind of looking back at myself from, what was it? Almost 15 years ago. It just seems, that seems like it would be really unhealthy to have that mindset for years as opposed to a single year. So
right, you did that for quite a while. You had, what was it, 3 deployments before?
So I did 3 to Iraq, and then I've done ones to Kuwait, Qatar, Lebanon, which again are technically combat, but they're not. I was going to museums and driving around and going to cafes and stuff like that. So I don't consider. I mean, according to my military record, the combat. According to Evan, no, I wouldn't really count that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, 12-month to Iraq, 14-month to Iraq, 6 months to Iraq. Back to sports, right? Let's get back into sports. So next chapters, chapter 6, strength and speed is called. It's all about kind of my foray into the very bizarre world of bodybuilding.
Oh, this is good. This is not as good as that little apple of a bicep you've got going on there, though. Holy cow.
Yeah, I look really good in that picture. On a side note,
that is an incredibly good picture. If you guys haven't read the book, just take it so that you can pick it up so you can take a look at that. Don't show it to your wives if you have a wife. If you're a dude, it's okay if you feel something.
You ever see the Family Guy where Stewie's like, everyone loves a vascular man?
No.
Oh, I always say that quote to my wife when you can see my veins, and my wife is like, no, they don't. That's disgusting. And I was like, are you serious?
That's actually true. My wife likes my physique the most before she met me when I was in college and was powerlifting.
Interesting.
Like when I was competing in powerlifting, she likes those photos because I weighed like 230. But I had decent totals.
Yeah.
She liked that, and I had a big beard or whatever. So that's what she was in. That's what she's into. I don't know. She's wrong, but it's convenient because she made me a lot of cookies.
Yeah, that is good.
You really, really were dieted down there, though.
Yeah,
153.
Yeah, so I actually don't weigh that much more now, but I carry more fat now, and I was a lot leaner.
Where? In a bag?
So what's weird about bodybuilding is you can, once you hit a certain level of, body fat percentage to then like from that point on, everything else is a step backwards, right? So it's really easy, especially not to be sexist, but especially on the female side, you can get into severe eating disorders from physique-based competitions.
Yeah.
And even as a male, right? Like, I mean, as I would, I'd go from 153 to 156 and I'd be like, oh, I'm so fat now. And I'd be like, what are we talking about? Like you can still see veins everywhere. But when you're dieted down, right? I mean, I'd see a couple of veins prominently in the lower part of my abs. And then I had like one or two that you could see sometimes that would run up through my ab muscles, right? Like that's how lean you get.
That's what Charles Poliquin says. He's like, not to be crude, but I mean, he says like you are not allowed to relax on your diet. He trains Olympic athletes. He says you're not allowed to relax on your diet until you have penis skin across your abs. Like it needs to be that. It needs to be that vascular.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. And the other one is the striated glutes, right? So
that's right. That's where I was going.
Yeah. So I always make striated. I never got to the point where I had striated glutes. I always make jokes about that. My wife's like, that's gross. That's not funny. So.
Is that even possible as a drug free? Because you competed completely naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. But you got to be really lean and you got to have a lot of training under your belt to get to that point, right? Like you can't do a couple of years of bodybuilding, come in with striated glutes at a show. Yeah. My understanding, right? I did bodybuilding for a couple of years, probably 4. My first show I think was 2010, and then my last show was 2014. So about 4 years. It's
never got striated glutes.
Never got striated glutes. Well, and honestly, the first couple of competitions I completely bumbled my way through. Right, like I like to figure things out on my own. Because then I can understand why I'm doing something as opposed to just listening to a coach. Right,
fail upwards.
Oh yeah, the cheaper solution and the quicker solution is to just hire a coach and have him tell you exactly what to do. I just read books and kind of figured it out on the fly, and kind of what really I'd say took me to the next level, or took me to what I think it was a good level, was a documentary called Raising the Bar, and they've actually got I think 4 of them. They're interviewing this bodybuilder, and he's like, listen, there's foods that work and there's foods that don't work. Here are the foods that work, and he lists like 5 or 6 foods, right? Like egg whites, chicken, fish, sweet potato, broccoli, green beans or whatever, and some nuts. And he's like, that's it. He's like, don't try to eat anything else. Just eat those. Right? And it like turned on a light bulb in my brain. And I was like, yeah, like instead of like you go to GNC and they're trying to sell you this cookie that's, oh, this is pretty good for you. It's only got, give me all the macros. Like just throw it,
Right.
Here's the foods that work. That's what you eat. Everything else is in the non-eat pile. And it was easier for me because I could just be like, this is acceptable food. This is not acceptable food. Begin. Versus trying to, be a little more flexible. And that's for show competing. For a long-term lifestyle, it may be different, right? There's a difference there. But for show competing, I think, again, I'm on board with him, right? There's foods that work and foods that don't work. You find the foods that work, and that's literally all you eat every meal for 8 to 16 weeks. And you show up on stage, get some pictures, and then try not to pig out afterwards because you can severely put on a lot of weight in a couple days as you loosen the reins.
Is that how you would talk about like getting ready for any sort of competition, is using those foods?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I only eat that stuff, but I still primarily eat a lot of bodybuilding type foods. I eat a lot more. The big difference is I do a lot more carbs now because you need them for running. But I still, egg whites, Ezekiel toast, and almond butter every morning for breakfast. I still primarily eat chicken for lunch and some sort of vegetable. And then
do you time your carbs?
I mean, I eat more carbs around training, so right before or right after training. And then casein protein shake at night. So
you got to have that little knot of dairy protein sitting in your stomach while you sleep.
That's right. I sleep better with it.
Really?
Sometimes I wake up hungry. Especially if I've been training a lot and if I don't have a protein shake before I go to bed, I'll wake up hungry in the middle of the night. So.
Wow. Okay. That's fun. I don't have any problem with that. I just live in a constant state of hungry, no matter what I do.
So that's the other interesting thing is it's when I'm, a lot of people try to lose weight. They're like, well, I'm going to do a lot of running and do a lot of cardio I think it's harder to maintain a healthy diet when you're doing a lot of running, right? Because it's upregulating your desire for food all the time.
Yeah.
Versus if you do a little bit of cardio and mostly strength training, the desire for sweets is not really there as much because I'm not, I didn't just go for a run that burns 500 calories or 1,000 calories. I think it's a lot easier to actually keep a lean diet and a lower body fat physique with a, little to no cardio training.
Absolutely. That's a different way of thinking, saying that I am now eating out of utility. I'm fueling my body as opposed to I'm eating for pleasure.
Yeah.
How long does it take to switch that?
It probably depends on each person, but it's a slow process, right? Like in the book, it makes it, and I think I talk about it in this book. It seems like I do it overnight, but it took months before I didn't want French fries, right? So it's an adjustment. Now I don't particularly crave them. It's like with anything, right? Whether you're just losing weight for a competition or you're losing weight for just because you want to look a little healthier. If it took you 10 years to put on all this excess weight and now you're trying to lose it, don't expect to lose it in a month, right? It's going to take you a couple of years to reverse back down. People get obsessed with I need to do it now versus smaller adjustments that stick longer will have a better result.
Right. You talk about actually that getting to a point where you have to, you find in your bodybuilding career that you have to commit more to bulking because putting on a few pounds seems unconscionable or something.
Yeah. You get into this I got to stay lean all the time mindset. But if you really want to build some new muscle, right, you need to be in a caloric surplus. Yeah, I went through this 4-month military training course and I bulked for all 4 months and I got up to 180, 182, which is a lot for me.
Yeah. I want to see 180, Evan.
And all my clothes were tight. I couldn't fit, my pants were all tight. But I could, you could still make out the general outline of my abs. It was, I bulked up.
You're talking about your pants being tight. I was wondering what general outline you could make out.
Yeah. Terrible. So terrible.
But your glutes, man.
So
come on.
Similar story. So similar story about that. Me and my friend used to dress up like Cupid for 5Ks on Valentine's Day.
Both of you?
Yeah, both of us. In Nashville as Cupid Run, right? And we used to wear, what Ranger panties are, right?
No.
You don't know what Ranger panties are? They're the really short, silky shorts that you see on sometimes you see them on CrossFit athletes. They're really short.
Oh, okay.
They're silk. Sometimes people call them silkies. Anyway, okay. That's what we would wear to this 5K race. We wear these little silkies, right? The Ranger panties, you call them. And we purposely buy shirts that are 2 sizes too small, and we'd have Cupid wings and a bow and arrow. And me and my friend would show up to this 5K, and we'd run as hard as we could, right? I'm running a 6-minute mile with Cupid wings and a bow. And there are people there trying to win and run seriously. And I'm passing them, and they're getting very upset.
Of course.
And then we'd go out in town afterwards. We'd go to bar hopping. And my wife would come along and take pictures, and she'd kind of follow us around. After one of them, she's like, "You're not allowed to wear those shorts anymore." I'm like, "Why not?" She's like, "I can literally see the outline. I can see everything. I can make out details." And I was like, "All right, fine." Because I'd worn them so much and they'd gotten wear down so much, they were thinner than they were supposed to be. But we had a lot of funny. People would be pinching you and coming up and taking pictures of you, and it was always a fun night. I think we did it 2 or 3 times.
Evan prepares the exhibitionist.
Yeah. My wife was there the whole time. There's some girls grabbing me, and she's like, my wife's like, "Give me your dirty looks." Eh. Yeah.
Hey, I don't know about you, but I'm living my best life over here.
So it was just one night. So she was fine.
This is random, but I hate being pinched. I don't care who it is. I have an immediate anger.
I mean, it's not pleasurable. It's just,
no.
I mean, again, they're pinching a chunk of your skin.
Yeah, it's just a weird. I don't enjoy the sensation of a pinch. I don't know. Some people are like, "Oh, pinch me, baby." No, please don't. I'd rather you slapped me. I could laugh at a slap, but a pinch, no.
Good
that's
to know.
war.
It's good to know, I guess. Or maybe too much.
Maybe I shouldn't have told you that.
Maybe it's too much information.
I don't know. Moving on.
All right. Any other final thoughts on bodybuilding?
Oh, bodybuilding. Man, there are not enough photos of you. Where can people find photos of bodybuilding Evan?
Honestly, just message me and I'll send some over. There are
whoa.
There are some online, but it's like when you Google someone's 5K time and it's like, oh, well, here's a 5K time from 5 years ago. It's like, well, no, I'm better than that. So like there are some online. I don't think those are my best pictures, right? Like my best pictures, I think I have a couple on my website in teamstrengthspeed.com. If you go to like the founder tab and click through the links at the links at the bottom, the last page has some of my bodybuilding pictures. And then I think I still have a Facebook profile, like an athlete page called The Fastest Bodybuilder. I think some of my pictures are still on there. So again, that was me just trying to find a little niche there, right?
For the branding journey.
Yeah, it's a branding thing, right? So I was doing bodybuilding at the time, and at the same, I could run a sub 3-hour marathon, right? So that's fairly unique blend of athleticism.
Right. You talk about that going from one thing to another thing, like bodybuilding to the marathons, and you haven't even discovered OCR yet.
Right. Yeah, I just wasn't very good at anything. So I was kind of bouncing back and forth, and I started getting better in each of them. And basically it's periodized training. I'm focusing on one thing. I'm building a lot of strength in there, whether it's speed or endurance or strength. And then I'm switching to something else, but I'm keeping the other. I'm still running a little bit, but just not as much. I'm still lifting, but, significantly more. And then, vice versa for during run training. And it allowed me to keep a lot of the strength and also build endurance, which is kind of what you need for the military. So I just had this really, really weird blend. I didn't know it at the time, but I'd been training for obstacle course racing for like a decade going into it. I just had no idea. I didn't even heard of the sport. So
do you think that like kind of the lack of sort of committing to one of those sports was probably why it took you so long, like in your athletic journey, to find the thing that you were good at? Because like you talk about like 3-month cycles of doing these different things. Did you ever feel like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. That's why I did it. I never thought I would get into a sport where I would get sponsors and win prize money and get to go to the other side of the world to race. I've gotten so much out of the sport. It seems ridiculous that I never in my wildest dreams thought I would get a lot of the benefits I've received over the last 5 years. I was just doing it because I enjoy pushing myself. I enjoy training for different things. I liked endurance running. I liked bodybuilding. It was fun, and happened to work well when I found obstacle course racing.
Right.
And then I think you combine the kind of the mental attitude from the military, especially when it comes to Ultra-OCR, which involves, right, when you get the world's toughest mudder, it involves not quitting and working through problems, complex problems. I mean, it just matched really perfectly.
Right. How much of that is mental? Like talking about doing, maybe we're jumping ahead, but like talking about doing an OCR race, like real quick aside, how much is mental and how much is physical?
The longer the race, the more mental. I'll say that. I don't know what the ratio is, but you can suck it up for 15, 20, 40 minutes for like a 5K OCR and really rely on your physical prowess. Especially if you're running and you've already gapped a lot of the field. When you get into the ultra stuff, I mean, your mind's got to be in the right place. And if your mind's not in the right place, things will start falling apart real quickly. Your body will always give your mind a reason to quit, right? Like something will always hurt. Something will always chafe. There'll always be some problem. Your mind will try to justify why you should quit. You're going to hurt yourself. You've got another race coming up in a month. You've done enough. Blah, 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 right? You'll always try to justify it to yourself to make the pain stop.
Leave it on the table.
Yeah.
Leave it all out there, I guess.
Yeah.
Leave it on the table? No. Yeah. Leave it on the course. Don't worry about whether or not you've got a half marathon the next day.
That's right. Well, one of my friends who read the book he's like, you were doing this, again, jumping ahead, some of like these stupid challenges. I was doing a lot of stupid challenges for years before I found OCR, right? Like 2 marathons in 2 days. I had done that. We did about the marathon, then half marathon. I'd been challenging myself all along. It's just OCR finally good enough where like it actually gave me a stage or something that I could use to raise money for some charities that I care about. So.
Right.
even probably when I stop doing OCR stuff, I'll probably continue this in some form or fashion, right? Because it's kind of like part of who I am at this point. We'll see. We will see. Foreshadowing.
Oh, we will see. that continues as well. Yeah. I don't know when this comes out. Like, you may have to cut this out, but like, how close will this come out to your next big challenge that has something to do with something we've already talked about?
Yeah, this will come out probably a week or two before it, so it should be public by then.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah.
So you're not slowing down on those crazy challenges.
No, I do. I mean, I've been doing one a year for the last couple years, so I've got about 2 more ideas left. This one and one more, and then I think I'm out of Ultra-OCR ideas. I have some other. Don't worry. Like I said, I have some other endurance feats. A different charity I want to work with, and kind of a different taking 2 worlds and kind of smashing them together, like the fitness world and some other part of the world that's not really fitness oriented, and I just want to smash those together and expose them to each other, raise money for a different charity.
Expose them like a Cupid running past you at a race.
Yeah.
It's gonna really expose that there.
That was bodybuilding. It's weird. You spend a lot of time on stage, almost naked. People cheer at you, and
or don't.
No, people cheer. They're friendly, even if you look like garbage. And you get spray painted, essentially black or dark brown, by a stranger. You're naked when that happens.
Okay, yeah. Do you have to spread for it?
Oh yeah. You don't want lines, Bobby. You want to show up with lines on your taint there? How dare you? It is a weird world. Yeah, it is very weird.
I imagine that you have to have a lot of mental sort of like just toughness to do something like that.
Yeah,
like you talk about like a lot of the events that you did, like especially early on, you would win because nobody else was there, and you still counted that as a win because it was just such an ordeal to do it at all.
Right. Yeah, it takes a lot of effort and time and energy to get ready for a show. So the fact that you show up and no one else does means that no one else is ready. It's kind of the way it goes. And I had an IFBB pro in the book. I was like, oh, I won. I was like, yeah, but no one else was here. And he's like, still counts, dude. And I was like, oh, okay. So
all right.
It was kind of nice to have a professional, big name bodybuilder who'd been on the Olympia stage kind of say that to you. That was really nice of him. And the other kind of funny thing is, most bodybuilders, I feel like there's a stereotypical view that they're like meatheads and they're mean and they're bullies, right? Because they're the big guy. But like when you get to like bodybuilding, like competing, a lot of those dudes were actually super nice. A lot of them are very introverted, right? Because if you want to live this lifestyle, you need to be willing to like not socialize and just eat the same meals all the time and spend all your time in the gym.
Or sleep,
right? Like, yeah, it's a very introverted lifestyle, and a lot of them are kind of shy, and who knows why they're doing it. Some of them, I'm sure, have background issues that they're dealing with, and other ones it's just something they personally want to do. It's not the culture you'd expect, especially the higher up you go. So
I think that a lot of us have like an idea of bodybuilding, or at least the professional bodybuilding community, that came from Pumping Iron. That movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, which a lot of people don't realize was satire.
Yeah, it was a docudrama, they call it, right? So half documentary, half scripted drama. So not much different than reality TV.
Yeah. I remember reading about some of the stories and how they were just goofing off. And I was like, man, like it was a great thing for a sport that hadn't yet been, I guess, popularized. Like that was kind of what like shot it up and brought it in front of the world stage, in front of everybody's eyes. But like it was also kind of like the theatricality was lost on a lot of people. Like that was an important film, not just because of what it did for that sport, but because there weren't a lot of films like that people were used to seeing.
They actually came out with Pumping Iron 2, the women. Not nearly as good.
Not see it. I didn't even know it existed until just now.
I own it on VHS, and I have a VHS player at the house. So
we were watching that, and like as soon as I come back up there,
the opening scene is like a shower scene. It's like,
yes,
it's super weird. You're like, is this? What am I watching? Is this a fitness movie? So it's unique. And then they came out with Generation Iron a couple years ago, which is kind of like their attempt at kind of doing a pumping iron, but for the modern generation.
Oh man, is that the one with Kai Green and
Phil Heath?
Yes. Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, so that's a good one. And they came out with Generation Iron 2 and 3, and that media company, Vlad Entertainment or something, has a whole bunch of bodybuilding, physique-based fitness movies. They're actually really good. And if you look on the back cover of Generation Iron, in the original, there's a picture of Branch Warren sitting at a gym, Metroflex gym in Arlington, Texas, which is Ronnie Coleman's gym. And if you look above his left shoulder, you can see the words ODA and then a number. That's my team number that I tagged the wall with when I was at Metroflex.
Oh, no way.
So I have that at my house too. I can show you. But yeah.
You guys have no idea how much cool stuff Evan has in his house. Like, dude, you can't stop. You can't get injured and quit. You got to go another 30 more years because you have a museum. You're gonna be able to like put up a museum about OCR and like all kinds of crazy stuff, and it's gonna be awesome. I'll go. I'll pay $5 for that ticket.
Nice.
Don't charge 15.
Okay.
Unless inflation allows for it.
Okay. That seems fair.
That was when you started Strength and Speed.
Basically, I'm looking for other athletes like myself who are running and strength training, and I can't find them, right? Like I'm looking on social media sites and, I think it was MySpace at the time or whatever, or I guess Facebook was around, right? And I was looking at, Googling things, and I couldn't find anything. And I was like, well, if I can't find something, I'll just create my own. And that's what I ended up doing. And that's where kind of Strength and Speed started. I was just looking for a place where people who were like me, who we could, motivate each other and hang out and talk. Over time, it generally follows whatever I'm interested in. So it used to be a lot more bodybuilding focused and endurance running focused, and now it's almost all OCR focused. Yeah, I was just looking for some friends. Just lonely over here.
Wait, so did you basically create a message board for athletes in the beginning? Like, because you do have the ranking system and that stuff, but otherwise, all you really had were a few wins. Strength and Speed kind of just like started off just like kind of rock and roll.
The thing is, you don't see a lot of the failures, right? So like I'll try something and it won't work. No one signs up, and I'm like, all right, that was a bad idea. And then I just give up. I scrap that and switch to something else. So what you're seeing now is fairly refined product, and
I think they call that pivoting in Silicon Valley. You pivoted, you didn't give up.
Yeah, sure. What we have now is essentially a Facebook group, and then obviously a podcast, and I write books and do some other stuff, some charity events. So it's just kind of an amalgamation of, as I'm interested in something, I just kind of tack it on to Strength and Speed. And, I got tired of like representing, all right, if I go to a running race, I represent my local running club. If I go to a bodybuilding show, I represent nothing, because I don't have anything that you represent, right? So I got tired of switching, and I was like, I just want one thing I can represent, and just as I switch sports, because I wasn't planning on staying with anything. Like as I switch sports, I'll just continue to represent the same thing, and that's kind of where Strength and Speed came from. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about website and apparel sales, thinking that your friends were going to buy stuff, and they didn't.
No one.
As far as you went with the apparel sales in the beginning, like, well, maybe my friends will buy something.
No, I've advertised and I have it's up on the website, but like that, it sells so little. It's just a waste of time and money. It was cool to get some shirts out there. Overall, a big loss. That's definitely a loss. I've made up for it with some other products and some of the books and stuff like that. But, it's just like when your friend at high school has a band and he has a CD and he's like, hey, dude, buy my CD. And like no one buys a CD, even though like everyone's friends with them. It's like the same thing. So,
I've still got 2 tubs of old band T-shirts at my parents' place.
Nice.
No.
A lot of my friends aren't on social media that I went to high school with. They are, but they don't they're not regularly. They don't interact. Right? Like if I want to show my friends something I've been doing or tell them something, I text them still. I don't. Right. They don't find out about it on social media. Yeah.
Awesome, because you started with an idea that you wanted to be anything, and so you just kind of let that grow with you. Like the representation of your journey is actually like kind of online. If you go in the Wayback Machine, I'll bet we could still find some of those original T-shirts.
Yeah, I still have a couple left. Not many.
No
I gave away most of them. I sold a couple, gave away most of them. But yeah. Yeah, I mean the black team strength and speed one and the gray one that's on the website still. I think there's still like one or two left. That's from the original batch of shirts there.
I'm getting on and buying one right now. Strengthandspeed.com, right?
Teamstrengthspeed.com.
Teamstrengthspeed.com. That's right. You hear that, podcast audience?
All right, so that kind of wraps it up with some of the bodybuilding and some of the other multi-sport stuff we were doing, and also with the special operations. And, next time we come back, we're going to start getting into the actual obstacle course racing portion of the book, which to me, some of the entrance into elite obstacle course racing, I just think is, especially when I go back and read through it in hindsight, I think it's funny, just the mindset and attitude I had going in compared to kind of the way things are now.
Well, it's funny, but if you actually want to be good at something like OCR, then it definitely helps to study how the people who are at the top got there.
Yeah.
Like you can't, it never just like starts at the first big win. It always started way before that. And so like understanding the training background of the people who like ended up in like, the top tier is, I think that's endlessly fascinating, not just narratively, but like for trying to figure out how to structure a good training program.
And then on top of that, because I had done triathlon and marathon running and then bodybuilding, I've been exposed to a lot of other different sports and kind of saw what works and what was successful. And I still use that. I carry a lot of those lessons over to the obstacle course racing world, both in my writing and, how to be successful in sports, right? Because even from the bodybuilding world, if you look at some of the biggest bodybuilders, the ones that were making the most money and doing, getting the most exposure, were not necessarily the best ones, right? I mean, they were near the top, but they weren't.
Right.
Like Jay Cutler, I'm pretty sure made more money than Ronnie Coleman, even though Ronnie Coleman won, several more Olympias than him because Jay Cutler was better at marketing.
We all know about Ronnie Coleman, but Jay Cutler was infinitely more interesting.
And here, another one, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger won, I think, 6 Olympias, but Ronnie Coleman won 8, and Lee Haney won 8, and Dorian Yates, I can't remember. But the point is, Arnold Schwarzenegger is the most successful, right? But like it's leaps and bounds, even though he wasn't the best bodybuilder of all time. So,
right,
a lot of lessons you can pull from that. All right, I think that about wraps it up.
Tune in next time for chapter 7 and 8 and the beginning of Evan's OCR career.
It's going to be great.
We've got a lot more failures to come, and some of them are even more embarrassing than some of the ones we went over tonight. But they come with successes as well. Much larger successes and more numerous than the failures. Kind of less fun for me to talk about.
Yeah.
I was just like narrow, like I like zone directly into like any sort of failure. I just really want to pick that apart because it makes me feel better about myself.
Right on. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this. I know me and Bobby have been having a great time. I hope you come back next week or the week after whenever I publish the next episode. Listen to that. Pick up a copy of Ultra-OCR Man, Professional Force Soldier, Record-Setting Professional Obstacle Course Racer. You can pick it up off You can pick it up off Amazon or off our website, teamstrengthspeed.com, or you can buy it on Audible and just listen to it. I think that's about it. Share, like, comment, all this good stuff. We'll catch you guys in a couple weeks.
See y'all later.